Good day, everyone. This is Pine Leaf Needles, and welcome to DDO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in DDO and here at DDO Players. Please welcome my co-host from Ravenloft, Draculetta.
That is right. Greetings from the mist of Ravenloft. I'm high atop Castle Ravenloft, looking out at the mist. How's everybody this evening?
Everybody is fine, I hope. I'm doing all well, and I hope our guest is doing fine, because tonight we do have a guest. So please welcome visiting us from Lotro Players News, Andang.
Hey everybody, I'm in the harbor and it's awesome.
Porthos Harbor?
Yes.
Or Stormreach Harbor?
The first one.
All right. Then it must be a little bit chilly there, unless you've...
It is.
All right. A bit chilly there. Nice and wintry, yes. Very well. Now we will begin with our topics, and that is, of course, to introduce everyone. Let's give a little bit of information about who we are and our time that we've had in D&D and DDO in particular. So, Draculetta, would you like to begin?
I sure will. My history with D&D, I started way back with the first edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, way back in 1979. I'm going to kind of date myself with that, I guess. I can actually remember setting in, I'm going to say study hall. Yeah, we'll go with study hall. Rolling up characters and taking graph paper and making mazes for me and my friends to run through. I'm
glad I'm not the only one who did that.
Nope. You definitely are not. And that, of course, led to me playing pretty much every D&D video game that has ever been released. I spent more hours than I would care to tell you about in the Secrets of Silverblades on the Commodore 64, that and the Curse of the Azure Bonds. Those were two of the greatest D&D games ever created, in my opinion. Spent just tons and tons of times in those. And then I moved into the realm of multiplayer online games. I played Ultima Online for a long time, dabbled in EverQuest, and then a couple of my friends told me, hey, did you hear Dungeons & Dragons is going to have an online game? And I did not know about it, so I looked it up to see what they were talking about, and it looked pretty good. I applied for beta, got in on like the third round of the last beta they had, and played in that, and then when it came out, at that time I couldn't afford to play, so I just forgot about it. And then probably 2 years later, a group of my friends decided we wanted to start playing. So then I decided, okay, I have never really thought about playing a game again after I quit Ultima Online. At that time, I refused to pay to play a game. I just thought that was crazy because, I'm buying this game and now I'm going to pay to play this game. That's just crazy talk. But they talked me into doing it, so I bought a box of it, and we played starting in about August of 2009, and that turned out to be right before free-to-play was announced. So I bought a 6-month VIP subscription, played right up through the free-to-pay launch, played after that till my VIP ran out, and then all of my friends quit DDO. So I played for a little while longer, and then I was just like, yeah, this is kind of boring if you don't have people to play with all the time, so I just stopped playing. And then one day I was actually talking to you, Pine Leaf, about DDO, and you were like, hey, I'm playing that too. And I was like, really? And then we started playing, and then this whole thing happened, and that's pretty much my history with D&D and DDO.
All right, thank you very much. Andang, what's your history?
Yeah, so I actually have played a few D&D games with friends and stuff like that. The main thing that really got me interested in D&D, though, was probably more the different podcasts that actually do a acted out version of their D&D playtime with music and all sorts of editing and stuff like that. And those are really what I prefer more, probably. just because it's fun to listen to and like a car ride, and usually they're pretty entertaining. I do enjoy playing, classic D&D as well. It's a lot of fun. And basically, when you guys said that you're playing DDO and it's free, so I decided to give it a try since I enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, that's kind of my game history of D&D and DDO.
All right, thank you. Now, in my case, I started in D&D not in first edition, but to the original edition. And when I say original edition, I mean one of the early printings where in the book they still used words like Hobbit and Balrog. This was I believe, the last printing before they changed that. When I'm talking about those original 3 small paperbacks.
So after Chainmail came out, it was one of the first editions after that then you're like talking about probably.
Well, Chainmail wasn't technically part of Dungeons and Dragons. It's just that Chainmail was listed as a supplement for the official combat system back in those days. And of course, no one used the official combat system. They used the alternate combat system, which eventually became the official combat system. The alternate combat system in the original books is what became the combat system in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons when that came out.
But you actually played first edition and not first edition AD&D. You were like one of the first edition guys.
Well, they don't call that first edition. They call that original edition.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, let's get technical and we'll call it.
Yeah, especially since they've merged editions in there. So when they talk about first edition, they usually mean first edition AD&D.
AD&D usually, yeah.
Or sometimes it might be referring to the box sets that came out around the same time that were supposed to be an introduction to D&D and do it in gradual pieces. I never really liked those box sets editions. I actually got since it came out just before AD&D, I did get the first tier of the Dungeons & Dragons set that came out to the box editions, but that's the only one I ever got from that. After that, it was AD&D first edition that I tended to play once that came out. Now, when second edition came out, I didn't do much in the way of AD&D. I tended to play other role-play systems for a while, usually GURP, and that was my main one, and tending to be more different types instead of fantasy, other types of role-playing locations. And I was doing that a lot on CompuServe. Yeah, so this is way back before the internet congealed into its modern form. I got back into D&D with the release of the third edition when they decided they weren't going to support 2 different lines and they collapsed once again. I did eventually get D&D second edition, but the only reason why I did so was because I was working for Wizards of the Coast around that time. And they sent me some D&D second edition stuff as some of the perks I had for the work I was doing with them.
Wow, nice. In what capacity were you working for them?
I was a network representative for Magic the Gathering in that time. So therefore I was one of those people who tried to keep up with all the Magic the Gathering rules so that and then about the time when 5th edition, I believe it is, of Magic the Gathering came out, they changed the rules so much. I don't think they've changed too much since then, but there was a radical change to the rules then, and it was harder to keep up because they left out interrupts and stuff like this, and my mind is still playing back interrupts and this stuff, and of course they removed interrupts from the game pretty much.
Finally, there's just always cool things that you just we keep finding about you. You work for Wizards of the Coast.
I know. So I was about to say, it's like every time we talk to Pineleaf, we learn something new.
About his personal life that's just awesome.
Just this little shining nugget of information. He just kind of just drops it like it's no big deal. It's like, oh yeah, I work for Wizards of the Coast. Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Well, I was a network person. I wasn't a direct employee from them, so there is a difference on that matter.
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, all right. So therefore, all right, so third edition came out, and that's when I started playing again, and that's when I had most of my time as a player, because during first edition, I was usually a dungeon master. In third edition, I tended to be a player more than anything else, and I have 3 main characters I remember from that day. The first one was a Scion, so I started out with using the psionics rules heavily on my first character there. And the second one, I decided to go for something a little weird, so I played a kobold wizard.
Can't get much weirder than that.
You can't
Really
get
can't.
much weirder than that, yes. Especially when you consider that the rest of the party was... Actually, we had some rather strange things in the party. We had, of course, the usual humans in the party, but I remember we also had someone who started out as a human, got killed, and got reincarnated as something like a pixie, I believe it was. And so that was the running joke the entire thing, because and that was the character who always did weird things all the way through. Whenever something weird goes wrong, he was probably the source of it. And then the third character I had was a pretty straightforward one. That was a human paladin. So that was the most straightforward of all of the characters I had there. Though before we finished up there, I did go back to my Scion for a bit. So I had in that campaign 3 different characters. After that, around time 4th edition came out, I stopped playing for a while.
What is this 4th edition that you speak of?
I know. I try to forget that myself.
It was all a bad nightmare, Pine Leaf. It was all
a bad nightmare. Good, that's right. Yes, that was a bad nightmare. Fortunately, now we have 5th edition coming out, and perhaps it'll erase the memory of 4th edition. It does seem to be, I think, much better on track than I believe the 4th edition was. Now, as for the video side, my first video game that had, well, it wasn't technically Dungeons & Dragons, but that was of an adventure type game, had to be a game that was in a book called 80 Games for the TRS-80. And it was a freebie that came with subscribing to a magazine. And you had to type it in because the book contained the program, so you had to type in the program yourself in order to run or something like that. So it wasn't a particularly deep or interesting program. The next one I remember was the Temple of Apshai, which was the first one I got. That was the first commercial one.
Oh, that game was amazing. I loved that game.
Yeah, and it came with a book where you could read the descriptions to it because they didn't have enough memory in the computer to put
exactly
down the descriptions.
You had your little stick figure sprite, basically, that you would think, oh, yeah, oh, I love that game.
Obviously, it's been a while since I've played that one. And, of course, that was on the TRS-80. Then, let's see, what was the next one I remember? The first D&D game that I actually remember playing. I don't remember the titles. I think it might have been one of the Baldur's Gates or something like that. And I did play Neverwinter Nights, but I never really got too far in either of those. I've probably gotten further in DDO than I have in either of those two. Certainly don't think I ever hit 7th level in either of them. I know there are some people like Brannick who always goes back to those classic ones, Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate, and Neverwinter Nights.
Baldur's Gate was a great game, in my opinion.
Let's see. Then there was... what was the... I remember once doing an online run where we were running using 3.5 rules. I was in a campaign. I forgot how it was done. I think it was probably done through email. Actually, no. It was done over... It was over a mail service. I think it was with what's now known as Google. One of the things taken over by Google since then. I don't do too much with that anymore, but it was a special mail subscription thing that you could subscribe to. And they were bought out by Google a long time ago, but before then it was one of those things that was great before Google bought it out. And we were running the Temple of Elemental Evil on there. And I was playing through that we did about the first 5 levels or something like that. So first we did the little side quest where you go to this little gatehouse and then, of course, to the main temple itself. And that was the next thing that I got into then was a little bit of WoW.
Totally different.
Right. And that's the first time I tried a MMO. And then after that, I got into Lord of the Rings Online, which, of course, my introduction to Turbine. And that became my main one. Well, I've been playing The Lord of the Rings Online for 7 years, just a couple of months after the original release of the game. So I got into Lotro, even though DDO came out first. I did not get into that when that was first released. Everything was sort of fine on that matter, but I think there's one point where I decided to try a free trial with DDO. I played that for 30 days or something like, until the free trial. And this was back when the starter zone was the harbor instead of Korthos Island as it is today. And I think I just decided I did not want to subscribe to two games at the same time. Well, actually, in Lotro, I'd already bought a lifetime membership on there. And so I put that aside for a while. I was thinking about it about the time it came to free to play, but the announcement came right after I started playing Eve for a few months. And so therefore I was playing Eve. I played Eve for about 6 months. That is until Siege of Mirkwood got released for Lotro. Then I dropped Eve and I was concentrated on Lotro after that. This was when I had a little break from Lotro for a few months and was spending some time in Eve. I didn't get back into DDO until maybe about a year after that, where I started to get back into that, and I've been slowly getting into it. Around the time the release of the Underdark. Now, I haven't been in the Underdark yet, but because that came with the Druid class and all that stuff, and that's around the time where I got back in. And in fact, the first major purchase I made concerning DDO was getting that expansion so I could have access to the Druid. And that, I guess, brings us up to the current time. I did get myself recently when they had about 6 months ago, this promotion for 15 months of VIP. I got that, so I'm currently under VIP using that. And my favorite character class in DDO is the Artificer. And I think that covers it all. All right, so now we will head on into the game news. And our first game news is Update 23. Draculetta, what are the highlights of the release of Update 23?
Oh, there is so much to talk about on Update 23. I posted on DDOplayers.com a little news bite about it, and I linked to the actual updates, release notes if you want to read them, because they are just massive. There is no way we could cover all of this. We would be here all night. A quick overview of some of what I thought was the highlights. The Epic Orchard of the McBray. A lot of players have been clamoring for an epic version of that, which it now will do that. So it's got the raid, all of the quests and everything have epic levels in there now. That's great for people that are higher level, I guess. I know a lot of people wanted that. I'm nowhere near anywhere of being able to even think about running epic levels.
Oh, what level is it without epic level?
Let me. You would ask me that. Let me look that up. I want to say it's 20-ish. I think.
Well, that's pretty close. That's almost that epic by itself.
I'm sorry. It's level 14.
All right, so we have a few more levels before we.
Yeah, the Orchard is level 14, and it's accessible through the Necropolis, which is basically 10 to 19 is the range for the Necropolis.
All right.
So we have that. Also, there is something they're calling Armor Up, which basically they are changing a lot of the armor, what happens with that for melee-based characters. Melee characters have been complaining for a long time. They were not, believe it or not, melees were saying they were not as good as ranged and spell casting classes. So they really looked at how the melee power, range power, and resist ratings of everything work for melees and armor classes. And they did a lot of changes to that. Then again, like I said, look at the patch notes if you want to read it, because it's like a lot of it I didn't even understand, because it was like they were really getting deep down into how, the dice rolls affect your DC class versus your magical rating, and it's some pretty hardcore stuff, especially for the min-maxers that really want to get in and tweak their characters. They're now going to be able to do that with these changes.
At least they talk about dice rolls and stuff like that, unlike Lotro, where it's like, oh, there's a random number generator that randomly picks stuff. I'm not going to go into how that works, but
Draculetta can talk about his experiences with the random number generator in Lotro.
The random number generator that hates me so. Also, in Update 23, there's a new item called the Mirror of Glamring. What you can do with this is pretty pretty sweet, actually. You can take any item, which includes armor, goggles, and or a helmet, and use the Mirror of Glamoring on it, and it will create a cosmetic copy of that item. And it is that cosmetic item that you make will be bound to your account. So that means you can swap it around on different characters on your account.
And I would presume bound to account means the same thing in this game as it does in Lotro, where meaning on the same server.
Yes, on the same server. Yes, correct. But it's pretty amazing though, because if you find a piece, say you're on your main and you find a robe that your main really can't use or anything, but you think one of your alts would look good in it, you can make a cosmetic copy of it, pop it in your bank if you have bought it, if you're premium or if you're VIP, you get the shared bank. Pop in there, get that, and you have a complete copy of that for your other characters.
Awesome.
And that is available only in the store. That is a purchase. Everybody has to buy that, even VIPs.
Okay, so Sithra ever starts playing DDO.
She'll go crazy. She'll be making copies of everything left and right.
Yes.
And they'll all be steel blue.
Yeah, probably steel blue. Do they have steel blue dye in DDO, though?
Oh, I'm sure there's some kind of blue that would work for
her. Okay.
Sithra will find it.
But Sithra will find it, yes.
There's also a couple changes to airships, which, of course, if you know airships in DDO is basically your guild hall. There's a new amenity on the guild ship that is guild storage. A lot of players have been asking for guild storage, and we now have it.
Well, I still need to get my guild up to rank 10 so that I can actually get a airship.
You and me both. And
yes.
Then I got to figure out how I'm going to make the money to buy one, but that's besides
the
point.
There's also that.
There's also a new enhancement tree available to all classes that is called the Harper.
Or the Harper Agent, technically.
The Harper Agent is free to VIPs, but everybody else, of course, must purchase it from the DDO store. And they kind of describe it as you can really decide what you want to be. It's kind of like a jack of all trades class. You really decide exactly what you want to do, and then you can really concentrate on that. And each class has a specific tree in that. Like I know the Rogue, I looked at it. It's basically like a sneaky assassin type Harper class, which would make sense for the Rogue. That's all I've looked at is the Rogue. I haven't looked at it on my Ranger, so I don't know what the other Harper trees look like. Have you looked at that at all yet, Pine?
Well, the only thing I've done, I have taken one enhancement on that on my main Artificer when I was in there earlier today, and put a point in there, but I haven't actually done anything heavy with it or anything like that. Most likely when I start leveling, because right now I wasn't too impressed with any of the trees, any of the other progression I've got coming up with me on the class or on my race at the moment. So I may actually start investing items into the Harper tree. So it's a new option for me, and it's probably going to be an option that I'm going to take with that character. Other characters, they have other trees that they're more interested in spending their points in.
It looked like to me it was going to be something for a min-maxer. They're really going to get into it because you can really tweak your character out more so than I think what you could before in the trees. So I'm probably going to play with it and see what I can do with it. And the big change that I think everybody's happy about in Update 23 is to hirelings.
Well, at least those who hire hirelings.
They made a lot of, I think, much-needed changes. You can now right-click on your hireling, and that will bring up a little command bar, and you can toggle a lot of their actions. Therefore, your wizard hireling will no longer cast the dreaded spell that nobody wants him to cast because you fall all the time.
Yes, the grease spell.
Yes.
We had a lot of experience with
obnoxious.
that.
Yeah, well, that's right. Andang actually hired, I forgot about that. He hired a whistling hireling, and he couldn't figure out why everybody was falling down. And I'm like, your hireling's casting grease.
unknowingly hired a wizard with that. My goodness. It's a mess, and I'm so glad that this change is being implemented because, wow. The wizards were really... I mean, I guess if you like to fall down a lot, then, the wizard's a great option, but my goodness.
And then also now in the changes with hirelings, if you have Stand Your Ground selected, they will now only perform a ranged attack if they have the ability to do so.
Yeah, if they have the ability to. Yeah, that
so
will
like
help.
if you would hire a fighter hireling, of course they're not going to do anything. They're just going to stand there. But if you have,
what? They might have a bow.
Oh well, that's true. I guess some of them do. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And let's see what else with the hirelings. Now your hirelings and your class pets will now stand still for a few seconds if you get hit by a trap, so they will not follow you straight into the trap, which they tend to do a lot now. So now I haven't actually tested it yet, but in theory, this should make it so they will stop long enough to where they won't actually get hit by the trap, and you should be able to tell them to stop, or they'll stop on their own before they hit the trap. They will also now use rest shrines if they're not in combat on their own now, if they're low on either health or spell points.
Oh, we don't have to order them?
So once again, I haven't actually seen it, so I don't know how well it works, but hopefully they'll be smart enough to do that now.
We'll find out. We'll find out Wednesday, right?
And then there's some changes to various quests and adventure areas. One of the big ones that stood out for me, since I mainly play a rogue most of the time, your experience bonus for disarming traps have now been increased to 10%, 20%, and 30%. Depending on which level that you're running the quest at. And the DDO game launcher now has the option to preload the game client logic DAT file. This should speed up the initial game load, and it should resolve any issues that would cause a player to face an initial disconnection to the game world upon first login.
And have you had a chance to see if you get in any faster?
I get in faster, but I still crash out. It didn't fix that, but I do load a lot faster now.
Yeah, I think it used to take me around 30 to 50 seconds in order to load once I was shown. And before I could move after I logged in, now it looks like it takes me about 5 seconds. So yeah, it does seem to be a bit faster.
And like I said, there is a post on ddoplayers.com with a link to all of the patch notes if you want to read them to see everything that has changed, but there is a ton.
All right, thank you very much. And you have anything you're excited about in this update? You're saying
the
what?
wizard is more than enough. Just fix the wizard and we're good.
Fix the wizard and we're good, yeah. Right, and we also had a preview with the developers, and that was going through in Drac. What was that all about?
Last Wednesday, they actually had a preview for Update 23, The Mark of Death, which came out today. Imagine that.
Imagine that. What a coincidence.
They basically were showing off. They showed off a little of the raid. They showed off some of the epic Orchard, and they dropped some prices and stuff, which we're going to talk about later. Basically, I guess I can cover it now. And I actually asked, I happened to not have to be at a client, so I was at home and I could actually watch his stream, and I asked him how much the Mirror of Glamoring would cost, and they dropped the bombshell that it was 245 turbine points, which I thought for sure it was going to be at least 995 was my guess for it, but it's 245 TP.
All right, that's a nice price.
They also showed off the Harper tree, and they had said that will be unlocked later on with Faber. Right now, it's free to VIP, or you have to buy it, but everybody will be able to unlock it later with Faber. They were saying probably update 24 or 25. They weren't for sure yet.
Right. Now, I did see the Harper tree preview. I didn't see the dungeon one since I didn't want any spoilers there or anything like that. But I did see the Harper tree update, and I had a look at that. So sometimes they go on a bit. Let's just say they could be more exciting in their way of presenting trees when they do it.
Well, yeah, but there's only so much you can do when you're showing something like that, because that's kind of
I know.
The most exciting thing to show. It's not like you're showing combat or anything, but
Yes, I know. I remember doing a couple of videos about the preview to the updates on Lotro when they were updating their class changes, and I remember my vids on that weren't exactly my most exciting vids I've ever done. So therefore, we'll now head on to Massively, and Massively rates DDO as an MMO RPG to come back to. And that's it. Yes, Sip over there has posted a new post from Massively about his top 10 MMOs that deserve another chance. And number 2 on his list was Dungeons and Dragons Online. DDO continues to defy expectations of going quietly into that good night. The last few years have seen the game first and second expansions along with new classes and the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. It's not the same DDO of the Stormreach era, but something far more grand and involving. Plus, where else will you find an MMO that has dungeon masters narrating your journey? That is true. You do have a narration on that. And let's face it, how many games can have dungeons that are narrated by Gary Gygax?
And I'll admit, the very first time I ran that dungeon and I heard Gary Gygax, I geeked out. I did. I will admit that live on the air right now.
Yeah, I just remember the first time I went to the dungeon not knowing what was going to happen. It says, "This dungeon is narrated by Gary Gygax." Now, Battle Bards episode 35. What is Battle Bards, Dracula?
Battle Bards is an awesome podcast that everybody needs to know about. It is Sip from Massively, Sil and Steph. They every week what they do is they take either an MMO or they take like a theme for an MMO. Like one week their theme was city, and they take the soundtrack of the game and they dissect the soundtrack and they talk about tracks and they say their likes and their dislikes. It is amazing. I never realized how awesome MMO soundtracks were until I started listening to this show.
Oh, really? How awesome they are? You mean even things done by Chance Thomas?
Well, besides, Lotro and Chance Thomas aside, okay. Everybody knew how awesome the Lotro soundtrack was. But there are just some amazing game soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And unfortunately, because of all actually, since I haven't done too many vids from DDO lately, I could probably turn on the music back on there, because lately I have had the music turned off because I was once doing a series, a playthrough about the early levels with the druid. And of course, during that time, since I tend to avoid playing music in the background when I am doing a Let's Play series, I of course have been having the music off all this time. So maybe it's time for me to turn the music back on so I could hear the DDO soundtrack for a change. It's been a while since I've heard it.
There's some good tracks in it for sure from just the little bit I've seen so far.
And Pineleaf, remember, Cobalt still hates you.
Oh, that's right. Cobalt still hate you!
Oh, goodness.
We'll head to the store sales. Dracula, what's on sale?
Free sample of the week through October 2nd is the major spell point potion. You get 10 of those. You can use coupon code MSPP24, MSPP24. You get 1 of those per account, but you do get 10 potions. So use that wisely. 25% off this week for Guild Renown elixirs, +1 to +5 stat tomes, the veteran status, and the 32-point build. Also, bonus days are running September 26th through the 28th. 20% heroic XP and +5% XP for all VIPs. Also related to the store sales, not necessarily on sale, with the update 23 that came out today, the store was down for most of the day. I did see on Twitter now that it is actually back up again. There are some new items in the store. The Necropolis Part 4 now with the epic levels. That is 850 turbine points. The Mirror of Glamoring, which we discussed a little earlier, it's 245 turbine points. The Harper Agent Enhancement Tree, 495 turbine points. And there is quite a new selection of cosmetic outfits, and those range between 495 to 795 turbine points. And that is all new stuff with the new update as of today.
All right, thank you very much. So now we'll head into the site news for DDO Players News, and we'll begin with Arcane Adventures with Dwarfbin Fizzlebeard. He has a prologue and a chapter. And Andy, could you please talk about this?
I can. This is actually done by Tapco, which is one of the former writers for Lotro Players, but he kind of got burnt out on Lotro, and so he decided to give DDO a try. And this is a pretty funny version of someone's first impressions of the game, and they go through basically talking about all the different things that go on for new players, and in some places making some really funny jokes about it too. I really enjoyed really enjoyed reading through this. It's a great series so far, and I can't wait to see where it goes in the future, because he thinks that he's going to be doing this for a while, so I'm excited to see what it turns into.
All right, thank you very much. And as I said, he had both a prologue and a first chapter in there. Also, we have a little plea, and it's your chance to join DDO Players. Andang.
Yes, from now till whenever the site shuts down, it's your chance to join DDO Players. Basically, at Lotro Players, we have about 30 different writers writing about all sorts of stuff, from the news to like screenshot series to like their personal like fan fiction and role playing, to news beyond Lotro and stuff like that. And we're looking for writers to do a similar thing on DDO Players. And basically, what we're looking for is really any type of content that you think that you'd be interested in writing for our site. One thing in particular that we hadn't been offering on Lotro Players, but we are offering for DDO Players, is the ability to send in audio samples to possibly become a co-host on the show you're listening to right now, DDO Players News, which is very exciting. And if you click on the link in the show notes, or just go to ddoplayers.com/join us, then join-us, or click in the top right on the site, then you can get all the details on how to send in your sample and join up with the site.
All right, thank you very much. So now that we'll go into news beyond DDO, and in this section, we'll be mainly talking about things such as the tabletop game and similar items that are related to the world of Dungeons & Dragons, but not with DDO itself. And we'll begin with the news that the Monster Manual, 5th edition of the Monster Manual, will be released tomorrow, September 30th. Yes, we've been, I'm sure, all waiting for this for a while, so that'll be part 2 of the traditional trilogy which they put out whenever they release a new edition. I think every single edition, starting at the first, they've always first released the Player's Handbook, then the Monster Manual, then the Dungeon Master Guide. So therefore, Part 2 will be coming out tomorrow, September 30th, for the 5th edition Monster Manual. And unfortunately, we have some bad news concerning the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Strat, could you talk about that?
Yeah, Mike Merles, who many of you might know is the head of R&D for Dungeons & Dragons, posted on his Twitter last week that they were reviewing the Dungeon Master Guide, the layout, and some of the writing, and their team just was not happy with how it was looking and how some of the stuff was laid out. So they want to release the best product they can, which I'm all for. So they are going to delay it for a little bit. The new release date now is December 9th for the DM's Guide. So you're going to have to wait a little bit more, but it should be a much, much better product for it.
All right. Thank you on that, and hopefully it is a better product for it. So we'll then head into our week in Dungeons & Dragons. We'll go into our week in Dungeons & Dragons online. We'll start with Draculetta. What did you do this week in DDO?
Well, my Ranger Rogue, who is level 7, ran Delaris Tomb Part 2, The Missing Party, with you, Pine Leaf. We did really good until the end.
Well,
And finally kind of found himself dying.
minor little detail there.
And we got to the point where you got to have somebody stand at a switch and pull the lever, and then somebody has to run through a set of doors, and then you got to pull the lever again, and then you got to run through the other set of doors. So Pineleaf was having his hireling do that for him, but he didn't pull the other lever in time, and I got stuck between two sets of doors.
Yes.
So that was a thing.
Yeah. Which means that next time what we're going to have to do is make sure that my hireling picks up my
Soul Stone, yeah.
My soul stone instead of you, so that I can order my hireling without worrying about popping over to you.
Yeah, that was probably a little minor oversight on our part, but
yeah,
I can't say
we
that
didn't expect. Yeah, we this is the first time we encountered something that absolutely required two people to do.
And I can say it's the only time I can ever remember getting stuck between two doors in DDO. So it was quite interesting, actually. It's a really inventive little puzzle they got going on there, where you have to have two people, and it took us a second to figure out that every time you pull the lever, another set of doors would open or close. So once we got that figured out, we knew what to do. But the problem was, we were stuck. My rogue is level 9. I'm basically just doing the Slayer rare encounter and explorer deeds in the Searing Heights wilderness adventure area. I'm 644 of 750 on the Slayer. That is taking forever.
I could imagine.
I'm 8 or 9 of the rare encounters. I'm not sure where the 9th one is. I keep running around, and all I'm finding is the 8 that I've already found, so I'm sure there's something I'm missing. Of course, I'm only 12 of 15 on the Explorer, so that last rare is probably in one of the Explorers that I need, I'm guessing.
Yes, but the rares don't always pop up in a particular run.
Well, see, that's true. That's why I keep having to go out and let it respawn, but
yeah,
I'll get it eventually, I suppose. I also ran today, actually, right after the servers came back up, the Bargain of Blood quest in the dungeon, which I have never done before. That's actually out in the Searing Heights. You get the quest from House...
whatever house it is.
I put myself on mute. Sorry, I'm talking away. House Deneth is where you get that quest line, and then that actually opens up 4 other quests. I've never done that quest line ever, so I ran that. That was really tough, actually. And of course, I just did it solo with a cleric hireling, but it was like really hard. I died once, but luckily I had already finished the main part. I was just going back to try to get one of the side objectives, and there was like 6 mobs that spawned, and I didn't realize they were going to spawn, so that pretty much killed me.
Yeah.
That was a bit much for me and the cleric to take, but I finally got it done and finished that. My druid rogue is level 5. I completed all the quests in the harbor. I did the Sharn Syndicate quest line, ran Irestone Inlet with Andang, actually. And that's when I spent half my time on the ground because his wizard was casting grease constantly. And that's when that's why I told him never buy a wizard hireling. Never.
Until this update when they should fix.
Well, yeah, actually, you can turn that off now. So, also did Walk the Butcher's Path with Andang as well, and the Recovering the Lost Tome with him. I created a fighter, which I'm level 2. I'm sitting on Korthos Island. I actually did that to run through with Mystery because she decided she was going to start playing and have never found a time that would work for us to play. So my fighter is just sitting there waiting to do something. And I've never played a melee before, so it should be really interesting.
Hopefully they really did improve him.
Yeah, I guess. I'll find out. But I wouldn't know because I've never played one, so I don't know if it's any better or not. But how about you, Pineleaf? What did you do this week in DDO?
All right, what I did this week. All right, my 7th level wizard, I went on Dalara's tomb with you, and you told us what happened there with my little mishap there where I got killed, and we could not find the restaurant. It turned out that Because in the end, after Drac got stuck in the door, I decided that the only thing I could do was release. So I released, exited the dungeon, came back in, and came all the way through. And as I was coming halfway through, I saw this restaurant right in front of me. I thought, where on earth is that when we were looking for it? Because that would have saved us a whole lot of trouble if we had known about that restaurant. All right, my second level artificer ran the stopping the Swahwagan quest on Korthos Island, which is when we go into these steam vents and try to find this giantish device and finish up with doing this puzzle.
Oh, I hate that puzzle.
I know Drac hates puzzles and he prefers to do puzzle quests with me since I like doing the puzzles and he doesn't like doing them.
That's right. I just stand and go, oh, cool, you solved the puzzle. Awesome. Look at the experience I got for doing nothing. That's my plan, and I stick to it every time, and it works great.
As long as the puzzle doesn't involve opening multiple doors at the same time, yes.
True.
All right, my 7th level artificer, all I did was log on after the update. I took one of the experience pills that I had sitting in my vault and reached level 7 and decided to add a point in the Harper agent tree. So that's all I did there. I'm going to get back on the artificer because I've decided I'm going to try to get that to start playing that character with Drac instead of my wizard because I really do like how the artificer works. Of course, the trouble is that Dolores Tomb, I'm not far enough along Dolores Tomb, so I have to figure out how I'm going to arrange that. But we're not doing Dolores Tomb. I'll probably be playing my Artificer instead of my Wizard. And my Rogue/Artificer, the one that's low level 1, I ran the Butcher's Path with Ending and Drac. So that concludes my week. Yeah, it was a rather short week with DDO. It was more on... I had a busy weekend with other stuff, with speech contests and the like. So therefore, I didn't have time for as much RPG as I would like to. So we'll go on to Anding. What did you do last weekend, DDO?
Yes, well, a few weeks ago, I created a paladin because what could be better than creating a paladin in any game because they're awesome and, they're holy and they like to kill things. And been playing solo for the first couple levels, but also on and off with Drac and Pineleaf. And been doing all the stuff they said, like the Butcher's Path and all that stuff. Reached level 3, so I'm making progress, kind of, sort of. But the main thing I want to talk about for my weekend game is just that I'm really enjoying the game so far, more so than I thought I would, because it is very different from a lot of MMOs. And I think that that's actually why I like it so much. The Dungeon Master narrating things is really cool, and all the various things like the combat system, the way it is very not MMO-like, and I think that that's really good for a DDO type game, in my opinion, at least, or a D&D type game. And just overall, it just seems like a very high-quality game that has clearly been, improved over the years, and continue to be built upon. So I'm really enjoying my time in DDO, and definitely going to continue on and off in the future.
All right. Thank you very much. Now we'll head into donations. Of course, this is our first week, so we do not yet have any donations, but we would love your support. And you can help DDO players simply by going to the donations page where you can help support the podcasts on DDO players and also help support the site. We have $5 mentions where you can donate $5 more and get a mention on DDO Players News. And of course, we will also have feedback, but since this is our first episode, so unsurprisingly, there are no iTunes reviews yet, but you could give us a review there if you would like, and also give us comments within the site. And you could also send us emails. And you could send us emails at podcast@ddoplayers.com. And you could also follow us at Twitter. You can follow the Players Alliance at Players Ally, DDO Players at DDO Players, Draculetta at Draculetta_72, Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needles, and for our guest, Anding at PVMP_Anding. The Players Alliance has 2 live shows on Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have DDO Players News, and on Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, Lotro Players News. And we also, and you can join us on these live shows at ddoplayers.com/live. Thank you all for listening. And this is Pine Leaf Needles reminding you to loot those chests.